we would like to thank the Under-Secretary General for Political Affairs, Political and Peace-Building Affairs. We thank Mr. Carlo and the Director General of the IAA, Ms. Grossi. We thank them for their briefings. First of all, we would like to express our condolences to the leadership and the people of the Islamic Republic of Iran, having to do with the numerous victims, including amongst civilians, which were the result of Israeli action. In front of our eyes, because of Israeli action, what is happening is a very dangerous escalation in the Middle East region, and this is something that requires an immediate attention from this Council. We are grateful to the Guyana Presidency for convening this meeting of ours so expeditiously. It's symptomatic that initially the Council was to consider today, at this very time, the humanitarian consequences of inhumane actions by Israel against the people in the Gaza Strip. Instead of that, we are here having to discuss a new, most dangerous and irresponsible adventure by West Jerusalem in the region, but this time it is also pushing the region to a large-scale nuclear catastrophe. In the early hours of the 13th of June, Israel delivered a number of extensive strikes against the territory of the Islamic Republic of Iran. Peaceful sleeping cities were struck, civilian infrastructure, and peaceful nuclear installations under IAEA safeguards. We heard from the briefers today that there have been victims amongst civilians. This completely unprovoked attack, no matter what Israel says to the contrary, is a gross violation of the UN Charter and international law. One is left with the impression that the leadership of Israel is convinced that they have a completely free hand in the region, and they probably think that Israel can flout any legal norms and replace all international bodies, including the Security Council and IAEA. The Russian Federation strongly condemns this action by West Jerusalem. West Jerusalem's military adventure pushes the region to the brink of a large-scale war, and the responsibility for all of the consequences of these actions lies fully with the Israeli leadership and those who encourage them. We are particularly concerned by the potential radiological consequences of hitting nuclear installations. My country has for a number of years been warning and saying that trying to resolve by force the issues surrounding the Iran nuclear program are unacceptable, as they can lead to the most dire consequences, not just the Middle East region, but for the world as a whole. But these calls of ours were not heeded, and the situation is now following the most negative and unpredictable scenario. Madam President, Israeli actions are aimed at undermining the various negotiating efforts underway now, the efforts to lower the tensions surrounding Iran's peaceful nuclear program. The whole world is looking with hope for the outcome of yet another round of indirect contacts between Iran and the United States, and they were planned for the 15th of June. Israel decided to preempt this in the way they deemed necessary and started bombing the nuclear and energy infrastructure in Iran, showing this way their contempt for laws, norms, agreements, rules, everything that is the basis for a civilized interaction between states. The responsibility for what happened is not just with the state of Israel, but also on its closest allies. This is a direct consequence of Western countries' acquiescence, who for months knowingly and methodically pumped up anti-Iran hysteria in the UN Security Council and in the Board of Governors of IAEA. The states didn't even try to come up with a constructive solution to the crisis surrounding the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action and the Security Council Resolution 2231, which endorsed it. Their goal was completely different. It was to put pressure on Iran in any way possible, to paint Iran as the source of all the trouble in the region, and to baselessly present the reciprocal legitimate steps by Tehran when they try to trigger the protection mechanisms in JCPOA as violating the obligations under non-proliferation. The Iranians took this for years and did not reject interacting with IAEA, nor did move away from a dialogue so as to find negotiated solutions. I would like to recall here, and this is of principal importance now, that all of the issues having to do with JCPOA began when the United States unilaterally left the nuclear deal in 2018. And also because of the principled unwillingness by the UK, France, and Germany to comply with the obligations they have under JCPOA, including to create the conditions for Tehran to receive the material yield from the lifting of unilateral sanctions by the EU in force until 2015. And later, they even went so far as to resume unilateral sanctions, which runs counter to Article 25 of the Charter. The European Union also joined in with pressure, disregarding thus their duty of impartial coordinator of the joint JCPOA Commission. The most egregious example was what happened in Vienna yesterday. Yet another biased and divorced from reality resolution passed by the Board of Governors of IAEA, which talks about some trumped-up threat to international peace and security from the Iran nuclear program. And this happened despite the fact that Iran is strictly complying with its obligations under NPT and under the Comprehensive Safeguards Agreements, and despite the fact that Iran remains the most inspected IAEA states, and the reports of IAEA Secretariat state clearly that there is no non-proliferation risk. In other words, the Western participants to the JCPOA have been doing everything to fuel the escalation and essentially incited it. They artificially created tension at international platforms, and this only provided Israel with additional impetus for radical steps and created the feeling of impunity with Israel. In the context of the current strikes by Israel, what we noticed is the information mass media about the fact that there was likely coordination between Israel and British special services. Immediately after the Israeli strikes, they sheltered the Israeli aviation which participated in the strikes in their bases in Cyprus. We also noticed the statement made by Israel when they said that they warned about their attacks. They warned Germany, JCPOA participant, and Italy. It also came to the fore that our American colleagues also had information about the strikes. The Israeli strikes were also supported by the French, who clearly knew about them beforehand. And we will not be surprised here if the members of this group of like-minded states will start condemning Iran for their actions, which they undertook fully in line with Article 51 of the Charter. We are following very closely the current situation with the IAEA Secretariat. The life and health of its personnel has been threatened by the Israeli military adventure, and we expect that the Director General of the agency is going to provide us with objective assessment and analysis of developing situation, including from the viewpoint of radiological consequences. Madam President, the unprovoked attacks against the territory of sovereign Iran, the targeted strikes on the peaceful nuclear facilities cannot be justified in any way. The international community cannot and should not stand idly by when such a provocation presents itself, and tolerating such actions is a sure way to large-scale war and a serious threat to global security. We're convinced that the Security Council has to provide an unequivocal legal and political assessment of what's been done by Israel, and also call for an immediate halt to any kind of pressure by force and for a rejection of practice of unilateral military steps. We need to support any and all diplomatic efforts aimed at de-escalation and the return to negotiations. Let me underscore yet once again that settling issues having to do with the Iranian nuclear program is only possible if a peaceful political and diplomatic pathway is followed. No forceful resolution can be either legitimate nor viable here. By the way, let me say that the United States themselves have stated this repeatedly when they explained their readiness to continue with negotiations. Russia remains committed to strengthening international law, abiding by the UN Charter, and finding solutions which exclude further sliding of the region towards a new destructive war. And we are ready to work with all those who will advocate diplomacy and who will be looking for peaceful means to resolve differences. I thank you.